Hey guys, it's Adnan here, and welcome to the channel. So in this video, I just wanted to catch you guys up on what I've been reading lately, and judging by the size of this stack, I'm probably likely to read for the next month or so, maybe even the next couple of months. So some of you may or may not find this list a tad eclectic as we move through it. Primarily because they come from vastly divergent genres, quite different from each other. But I think compared to my previous reading list rundown in October, this list should give you a better sense of what I look out for and what I truly enjoy reading. So first up on this list is Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. This is a book I've been excited about for the longest time. And for those of you who might not be familiar with who Richard Wagamese is, Richard Wagamese was a prolific First Nations author here in Canada. And in this book, primarily through the perspective of the title character, namely Saul Indian Horse, we are introduced firsthand to the systemic oppression of the First Nations community that permeates Canadian society at worst, and just outright indifference at best. The book highlights the horrific state of affairs at residential schools here in Canada, and it kind of illustrates how over several decades so many children from the First Nations community were systemically torn away from their parents and indoctrinated at a very young age. And this is something that's been going on here for decades and decades and decades, with the process of reconciliation still going on. And much like another book that I mentioned a while ago, namely The Skin We're In, Indian Horse really pulled aside this veil of Canada as this, utopia of tolerance and inclusion. Next up on the list is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. I think it's my first title from Malcolm Gladwell since What the Dog Saw, which is something I read, way back in high school. And this is a book that's been recommended to me quite often. A lot of friends have read it, a lot of family members have read it, colleagues have read it. But it's just something that I kept pushing down, further down my reading list. My reading lists tend to be quite malleable. It's just the way it's been for the last 4, 5, 6 years. When something catches my fancy, I just tend to give that book or series or whatever the case might be more precedence than other books that were previously on that same position within the list. So Talking to Strangers is something that I probably haven't done justice to over the last year or so. But I think one thing that finally kind of gave me that push I needed to prioritize the book, head down to my nearest Indigo and pick it up was I was watching an interview of Malcolm Gladwell, the author, on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne. And I think Malcolm Gladwell was basically talking about the Sandra Bland case that took place a few years ago, which, for those of us who are familiar with it, was quite harrowing and dominated the news cycle for quite a while. And he kind of detailed how that incident kind of, galvanized him and kind of pushed him to write the book. And from what I hear, the Sandra Bland case actually occupies a huge section of Talking to Strangers. And so the fundamental premise of the book and what really underpins it is it takes a very exhaustive look at the interactions and relationships between strangers and why we fail to decipher the intentions of the other person. And most people, and I guess I'm probably guilty as well, most people don't really give this much thought, but this fundamental failure to communicate effectively, these underlying social fissures, they give rise to grave misunderstandings, right? And sometimes with horrific, truly harrowing results. So this is a book that I've actually already finished reading, and it was actually a birthday gift, The Book of Why by Judea Pearl. Now, I didn't know much about this book. I didn't even know who Judea Pearl was, but kind of, doing some research and delving further into the matter, I found out that Judea Pearl is actually the father of the late Daniel Pearl, if you know who he is. The Book of Why dives headfirst into the subject of causal inference and the study of cause and effect. It essentially charts the trajectory of the field in general and pioneers within that field. And perhaps one of the biggest takeaways from the book is, towards the end, where it kind of dwells on the implications of causality on artificial intelligence. And for someone like me who's really enthusiastic about 5G, AI, IoT, smart cities, driverless cars, that was very interesting. And now for the fantasy section of this haul, we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin and The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Quite formidable reads, as you can make out. Now, I'll be honest, I'd actually never heard of these books or these authors until about a few months ago. I think probably 6 to 8 months ago, and that's when I finally added them to my reading list and had a chance to pick them up quite recently. But I've been hearing a lot about both books and they have come highly recommended to me, so quite looking forward to them. I'm actually pretty intrigued by the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. I was recently skimming Time Magazine's top 100 fantasy series list, which they came out with, I think it was probably a couple of months ago, I don't recall. But this was there, and this was, placed alongside such, mainstays like The Lord of the Rings and Narnia and the Earthsea series, and I thought there must be something about it, and so I decided to pick it up. But you know what, if anything else, I'm a huge fan of the artwork for both these books, absolutely loving them, and from what I can make out from The Priory of the Orange Tree, it's going to be a very long read. I think it's clocking at something north of 800 pages, but I recently finished the final book in the Demon Cycle series recently, and that was slightly under 800 pages, so I think I'm definitely in a bit of the fantasy mind space right now. The Education of an Idealist by Samantha Power is another book that I've been looking forward to reading for quite a while, even more so since her appearance on Bill Maher, I think, last year or so. So Samantha Power was the former United States ambassador to the United Nations under the Obama administration, as well as a member of the National Defense Council and a senior advisor to him for many years. So The Education of an Idealist is basically her memoir tracing her professional and personal life from a human rights activist to cabinet member. So I think at this point it's safe to call it, this will be my final book haul for this year, well, whatever's left of it. I'm planning to use the remainder of the year just to, get through this huge stack, obviously, plus some more writing and, planning for the year ahead. And of course, if you've read any of these books, come across them before, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back with more videos very soon.